Greetings. Tonight on Maldo's Magic, I have the honor of bringing on the show Brother Robert Previto. Tonight we'll be discussing tarot and Freemasonry. This is Maldo's Magic. Greetings, brother. How are you doing?
Good evening, Brother John. How are you?
Great. Thank you for coming on the show.
It's my privilege.
It means a lot to me, and I've been waiting to have this conversation with you to dive into the tarot. I know you're someone that loves the mystical art, and so the floor is yours. Tell the viewers really, about yourself, a little introduction, and
All right. Well, I'm 62 years old, and I've been studying the tarot independently as a solo for about 30 years. My introduction to the tarot began when I was in college inadvertently. They had a surprise birthday for me, and one of the gifts that I was given was a tarot book written by Aleister Crowley called The Book of Thoth.
Okay.
And the guy who gave it to me had no idea what he was giving me. I had no idea what he was giving me. The story's actually very funny. Because we used to play a role-playing game similar to Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay.
We were all actors.
Oh, wow.
So it was role-playing. It was no books though. And one of the so-called evil characters in this role-playing game had been named Thoth.
Really? Wow.
But it was named without knowledge of who the real Thoth was. So at that time, we just thought, he bought me this book because he thought it was cool.
Oh, the name, right?
Yeah, I mean, we were like 24 years old, 23 years old. Cool that the name was Thoth.
Yeah.
So I sat on the book for about a year. And then eventually I started to get curious about it. I actually started to read it. And of course I learned, and you may not know, your viewers may not know, that Thoth actually is not an evil character at all. It turns out to be the Egyptian god of wisdom, and who is accredited with the invention of letters and numbers. So it's actually quite the opposite.
Yeah.
And it can show you that how when you don't look at things closely, you may have a completely different impression.
Wow.
And that's how I was introduced to the tarot. I started to read the book.
Okay.
There's more to the story. I don't know how much you want me to tell.
Yeah, it does. But the floor is yours. You could, introduce it's your story. So
okay,
definitely want to hear it.
Okay, and this is kind of important if you're interested in studying tarot. And I know if you're watching John's programs, you probably are. Okay. I began to dabble with the cards, with Aleister Crowley's deck, which is, I like to call the Crowley Frida Harris deck, because she designed it. And I bought myself a deck and I read the book, but I didn't pay much attention to any of the traditional ways with which you treat cards and take care of them. I just sort of played with them frivolously.
Okay.
And I can tell you that over the course of like a year and a half or so, my life, which had been at an apex at that time, completely collapsed.
Wow.
And everything I had, I lost. And it took me several years to realize that part of that connection was attributed not so much to the way I treated the cards, because I did treat them as a sort of not that important thing, and sort of would throw them around and play games with them, like card games, as well as not really study them. But also that reflected the way in which I treated life.
Oh, okay.
Also, because the cards represent cosmic forces and human forces, right? So if you disrespect those cosmic forces, they don't like that. But they are symbols of real life.
Yeah.
Long and short of it is, when I put this together, it took about 5 years.
Oh, wow.
And I had sort of ignored the cards for a long time. When I had this revelation, I eventually burned the first deck, including the container I had it, to dispel. Okay. And I didn't do it knowledgeably either. I didn't realize that burning was a cleansing.
Oh, okay.
But I just instinctually said, I gotta burn all this. And I burned a lot of other stuff in my life that I needed to get rid of.
Wow.
At the same time.
Okay, that's good.
And my parents came home. I was living with them at the time again. And they found me in the backyard burning all this stuff. And there's our boy. Now, fast forward.
Okay.
2 years later, I'm in Greenwich Village, New York. Okay. And the college I went to by the time, now I'm way out of college by now. I've been in Chicago and back by then.
Okay.
But the college I had been going to was New York University. So I was living in the village. Now I was back in the village at one point, and I'm on 8th Street, St. Mark's Place, and I see this guy sitting on a sidewalk reading using the deck, the Crowley Harris deck.
Oh, really? Okay.
And of course, I didn't have much money at the time. I wasn't going to get a read. And he looked at me, and he said, "I don't need to read you." I said, "What?" He goes, "You will have the cards again." Just like that.
Wow.
And of course, my mind was kind of blown.
Yeah.
So, it took about another 2 years, and I was driving past the Barnes and Noble down in Soho, actually, not Soho, in Chelsea.
Okay, Chelsea. Okay.
And I went into the Barnes and Noble, and I just, by impulse, bought the deck.
Really?
And then I kept it, I wrapped it in silk, kept it for about a year,
Oh, really?
and let the energy sit.
Oh my goodness.
And when I finally reopened it and was ready, I said to myself, this time I'm going to do it the right way.
Nice.
And that was about 30 years ago.
Wow.
So I've actually had the cards maybe 38 years, maybe.
Really?
Yeah, almost about 35 years.
Oh my
But I
goodness.
didn't really get serious until about 30 years ago.
Okay. Has that been like the only deck you've been using or dabbled with?
I have dabbled a little bit with the Sforza deck, the
Okay.
Visconti Sforza deck. I own a copy of that.
Oh, nice.
And I have looked at certain other decks. The Morgan Greer deck I looked at.
Okay.
I looked, of course, at the Rider-Waite deck, Rider-Waite Smith deck, as I like to call it.
Yes, yes.
And I'll get to that, I guess, when we get to
Yeah.
it. But primarily I study the Aleister Crowley, Frida Harris's deck.
Okay.
Yeah, that's been the primary study.
Nice. Yeah, it's a great deck. I have it too as well. I brought my Philp deck here too as well, so I have it. And but the deck that I personally use, as I said before, is my Boda deck. Bills of the Adiatim deck, which I use sometimes here at the class. It's a deck where you actually you get lessons sent home and you color it. So all these cards I hand color them, every single one. But it's only the major arcana, the 22 ones, because the cards connect to the Hebrew alphabet, so each card has a Hebrew alphabet on it, a letter and stuff.
Well, yes.
Just got my new Rider-Waite large size deck, so I can really dive into this, and this is what we use to teach the class here at Buddha Valley Records in Salem. So if I could dive into some questions, if that's okay with you, brother.
Of course. That's all
So
here.
basically, the topic being tarot and Freemasonry, I wanted to see how it connects. And some say that there's no connections with tarot and Freemasonry, or tarot has no place in Freemasonry. You hear. So my first question to you is, can you start by sharing a bit about your background and how you became interested in both Freemasonry and tarot? So maybe now Freemasonry, because you just explained the tarot. So go ahead.
Well, it's really a great question, because it was the tarot that led me to Freemasonry, okay?
Wow.
And in my studies of the tarot, I began to keep seeing references to Freemasons pop up.
Okay.
A couple of different names.
Okay.
One of them was
Yeah.
Waite,
Yeah,
Waite.
yeah.
One of them was Aleister Crowley.
Okay.
There are others, who could be named. And I started to get interested in the idea of, in my spiritual studies of Masonry, of tarot, to where this comes. It might be interesting to see what Masonry really is.
Yeah.
Because of course, I had always heard of Masonry in the distance, but had no real idea, conflated it with Mormons and, all kinds of weird things. You don't really know what it is. And a friend of mine who was one of my earliest mentors in Wicca, okay, Debbie was her name, and Debbie got herself ordained in New York City as a interfaith minister.
Okay.
And I went to her ordination and party after, the pizza party after, and I'm sitting next to this guy I don't know, and I noticed that while we're having pizza together, a very nice guy, and I noticed he's wearing a Masonic ring.
Okay.
And I start asking him questions about Freemasonry, and I kept up at it, and finally he goes, well, if you're really interested, I'll send you a petition. And it turned out he was the Worshipful Dan Gruber of Mariners Lodge number 67 in New York City at the
Oh,
time.
wow.
He was the master
Oh, really?
of the Mariners Lodge at
Look
the
at
time.
that. Wow.
So it was just one of those things. And that's how tarot, because I met Debbie through my studies of the tarot,
Okay.
and then him. But my interest in Masonry was I want to find out more about tarot and to an extent ceremonial magic.
Okay, excellent. Wow. So now, next question I had is, so what first drew you to Masonry, and what eventually led you to the tarot? So basically, you kind of answered that, right? So I'll hop to the next question, really. In your view, what are the parallels between the Masonic ritual and tarot symbolism? How do they complement or enhance each other?
It's a very good question,
Yeah.
and it's not that easy to answer.
No.
Because one thing that I learned about Freemasonry, I went in Freemasonry sort of thinking, do they have some of the mystic answers to ceremonial magic and tarot that I was reading about in various books that I read concerning tarot and Wicca and witchcraft? And the answer ultimately is no.
Okay.
Because Masonry, and I'm not allowed to reveal any of the secrets, right, upon penalty of this, that, and the other.
Yep.
All right. But Masonry is a language of symbols.
Okay.
So is tarot. So is magic and witchcraft.
Okay.
They're all three language of symbols.
Okay.
So, like any, they have these correlations primarily on the idea that they operate in very similar ways.
Yeah.
You must learn the symbol. You must learn what the symbol means, the meaning behind the symbol, and then how to use it in the material world to affect the material world. But Masons, which are really derived from the stone Masons, Freemasons, Masons, right? They build with stone. What I discovered is that Masonry itself is extremely material.
Okay.
It's actually, it does resort to some spiritual invocation.
Yeah.
And it acknowledges spirit, but it is actually very rooted in sacred geometry, which is material, three-dimensional.
I see.
So although there is a language of symbol in Freemasonry, as in witchcraft or tarot, the aims of Masonry are material, meaning either the building of the world, this material world, and our spiritual edifice within this world.
Oh, I see.
Masonry leaves the spirit to what comes after. And beyond.
Okay, I see. All right.
So Masonry is about us. So I found what I discovered was there really isn't a mystical answer in Freemasonry to any of these things.
Wow.
But some of the symbolic and reasoning processes are the same.
Yes.
And some of the symbols cross.
Yes.
So some of the symbols are the same symbols as used.
Yeah. Like if you, for instance, if you pull the card from the Rider Waite deck, the High Priestess, and if you pull that card, anyone knows what that card looks like. Basically, she's sitting in between two pillars. So it's interesting because a normal person probably wouldn't notice it, but I think a Mason would notice. Oh wow, some connections there, right? By symbols, common symbols that you see in Masonry. So that's how, for me, how I saw when I was similar path. I was into tarot and all this stuff prior, and it led me to research and go into Masonry based on that same inclination. Like, what maybe there's some something here about it that could expound on like the symbolism behind the decks, because most of them were created by Masons.
Well, that's the other crossover that's not symbolic, is that although Masonry is not magic and it is not divination, yet principal Masons have been major contributors to unlocking the history of the tarot, to interpreting the tarot, and creating the tarot for the last, for the 19th, 20th, and now the 21st century. So the critical Masons who are involved in the tarot in the modern era. And of course, Waite and Crowley are among them, as is Papus.
Yeah, so just so the viewers could see, right here, this is the High Priestess card I was talking about before.
Right, now if you are a Freemason
Yep.
and you study that card fairly closely, you will definitely pick up the Masonic symbolism. that he is referring to, that John Maldonado is referring to.
Yep.
This is a copy of the same card in the Crowley-Harris deck, the deck of Thoth, as they call it.
Oh, wow.
But you do not see the same symbols. However, you do see the pillars.
On the sides?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not very clear in the podcast, but yes, they are there.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, the deck, I heard Lon Milo described it one time as disturbingly beautiful. And every time when I heard that on one of the videos he made, I'm like, that's how I described it, because that fits him. That can be seen as disturbingly beautiful. You know, if you're comparing it to like the most commonly used deck in movies and whatnot, the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. But there's some deep symbols in there. You really gotta go deep and study it to understand, and unpack it.
It's not as emotionally pleasing. In some, it might be a way to see it. The Crowley-Harris deck.
Yeah.
Well, I like to say that Waite created the last great deck of the second millennium, and that Crowley with Harris, and when I say Waite, I also refer to Waite with Pamela Coleman Smith, who actually drew the paintings at Waite's instruction. Whereas Crowley, 40 years later, did the same thing with Lady Frida Harris. He instructed her how to paint his deck. And I like to say his deck is the first great deck of the third Aeon.
Oh, okay.
So that there's a direct connection, which is why these decks are both the #1 and #2 most popular decks today, with Waite being the most popular.
Most popular, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because I think like when you go to like when you look at the symbolism, there's something about the Waite's deck that's like it's easily defined or understood, like where it takes place. Something could say it takes place in like a medieval setting with the knights and stuff, where you could see it. Even though it's similar cards, but he even switched some of the cards have different meanings, and I think he switched some of the Hebrew letters too. I know the star is Aquarius, and that's the one thing so there's some differences with that, and then obviously the artwork. Is
very different. I mean, a good example, and while we're on the Mason connection, is the 3 of discs, or 3 of pentacles.
Okay.
Now, I would love you to show the one from the Waite deck.
Okay.
By the way, Waite and Crowley were both Freemasons.
Yeah.
Crowley later left the craft. This is the 3 of discs, coins, pentacles, however you want to call them.
Okay.
Now, one difference you can see right away is that the paintings by Lady Frida Harris, are abstract very often. Now that is the same card in Waite's deck, and you can see it is a very literal depiction of 3 workmen, 3 discs. And this card refers to work, to works, to building, creating. And the images in that are 3 craftsmen working on the building of what appears to be an arch and a groined ceiling in a Gothic type setting. This one, the subtler look, harkens back to the pyramid in the center with the 3 wheels of work. So one of the changes as we go from the second Aeon to the third Aeon is that Crowley takes on the Art Deco abstraction. He and Lady Frida Harris. He's not harkening back. He's looking forward. Whereas what Waite did was drag all this information out of the darkness. Because we have to remember when Waite designed this deck was like 1890 or something.
Yeah, probably the late 1800s, early 1900s, around that time, where like maybe the peak of the Golden Dawn, around there.
Right, and so the whole world is shifting at that moment, and in a way we have to go back to Papus.
Okay.
If I could segue.
Please, yeah.
Because of the 3 principal Masons who contributed to the tarot, going back in time, you have Crowley, then you have Waite, and then you have Papus. And Waite's about 40 years old, about 20, 40, 30 years older than Crowley. But they knew each other. They were both in the same order.
Okay. And I think Papist was around the same time.
Papist is earlier.
Yeah, earlier.
So again, about 20 to 30 years earlier than Waite.
Yes. Okay.
And what Papist does, Papist is French. The other two are, Crowley's English.
Yeah, English, yeah.
Yeah.
I think Waite too is English.
He might be, but he didn't do a lot in America too, maybe.
Yeah.
But Papist is French. And Papist is the guy who, with his book of tarot, I mean, it's hard to remember now if you're watching today. But this stuff is like, we have a store here, they've got tarot symbols on the wall.
Yeah.
You got incense, you've got... In 1870, even 1890, this stuff was taboo.
Oh, yeah.
You're talking about heresy.
Yeah.
You could be excommunicated. 100 years earlier, you might have been arrested as a witch.
Yeah.
I mean, so these guys in the late 1800s, after what we would call the Civil War era, after that is when magic begins to creep out of the closet. And I'm talking white magic. And the study of symbolism. But so these guys are really pioneers, Papist and Waite, and to an extent Crowley too.
Yeah.
Even though he's like 70 years later. They're still pioneers.
And you know who influenced Papists? Levy.
Eliphas
Levy. He wrote a High Ritual and Dogma of High Magic, and in his book he basically laid out what Hebrew letters were connected to what tarot cards and stuff, and that was used as the basis for I think Papists. Some of it Papists used, and also he also was French, and also the Golden Dawn, which was created in 1888 by some prominent Masons as well.
Right. So Papist and Levy predate the Golden Dawn. And Waite's work. But yes, Eliphas. So they all look to Eliphas Levy really as the guy. But you can imagine now. You can walk into any occult bookstore today, maybe at the Barnes and Noble or another book, and find some of these books readily available.
Yes.
But you can imagine 150 years ago, 120 years ago, trying to find a book by Eliphas Levy. Like
it was a rare manuscripts.
These are rare manuscripts. Then there may only been 50 printed, 100 printed.
Wow.
And some of them relate back to grimoires that came even earlier. The history does go back. But it didn't come out of the closet until really the turn of the 20th century. Is when magic starts to go. Serious people start to look at it. So to speak. Is when it begins to happen.
I think it's when it kind of became more an organized rite. They were organizing it into something that could be someone get initiated into, because a lot of all this stuff stems from like the ancient mysteries. But not a lot of the ancient mysteries were maybe written down. Some was mouth to ear, so we don't know. We only know like when the Rosetta Stone came out. That's how we know some of like the Book of the Dead and the Egyptian Book of the Dead, which it's used in some magical groups too as well. Some kind of rituals they were doing. But the Greek ones are the hard ones. It's hard. The Eleusinian Mysteries is really, we hear a lot about it, but
we
no
don't
one really knows what
transpired.
It's
like the Oracle of Delphi. And Delos and all those things are lost to antiquity. And now one of the things Crowley writes about is like, where does the tarot come from? And Crowley and Papist both sort of agree that it was what we now call the Romani people. Or it used to be called the Gypsies.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, the Romani people, quick diversion. They were called the Gypsies.
Those are Romanian people?
Well, here it is. I'll give it to you. Okay. The Romani people remain today a wandering people, nomadic people. They did not come from Egypt, but Europeans thought they did, and sort of assumed that they were all from Egypt.
Oh, really?
But they were not. They were from the subcontinent of India. So the Romani people are mostly genetically descended from India, which was even further back, or as far back, but they were called Gypsians, which is a diminution of Egypt. Egyptians, they were gypsies. They weren't real Egyptians. They were gypsies.
Really?
Okay, that's how gypsies came around.
Wow.
And of course, and today they're called the Romani people, which the Romanians don't like.
Really?
Because major Romani strongholds are in Romania. and I have been there. But the Romanians, they're European, so they don't want to be associated with the gypsies.
Oh, okay.
So, but whoever gave them the name Romani, who knows, you know? And it's this weird thing. You can't lose anybody.
History,
It's really what it is.
Wow, I never knew that. That's the first time I heard that. From so southern India, around
that
area?
No, but it could have been from Pakistan, but it's definitely from the Far East, southern Far East.
Okay.
Was, the Indus Valley, the enormous area could, who really know.
And they were just, I guess, wanderers, really, right?
Yeah, they were nomadic. Wanderers, right.
Yeah.
But they are attributed to being the keepers of the tarot. They are the ones who believe to have carried the ancient knowledge of the tarot down the millennia.
Wow.
For a couple of thousand years, until finally it starts to resurface again in Europe. Because where did a lot of them live? They roamed Europe. And how did they make a living? One way was telling fortunes with tarot cards.
The most common way you hear too, as well. People always say, "Oh, so you can tell the future?" Like,
maybe. The answer is maybe.
So that's not. I always my answer is always that. Yeah. That's not why I learned tarot.
That's not what you do.
And I always tell people, listen, its main purpose was actually a tool to unlock your subconscious mind. That's what my explanation is, and I wanted to learn it because I understood that there were powers and energies behind it. They represent these to connect to my subconscious and help to unlock it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
it's a meditational tool, ideally.
Yes.
I believe.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So there's some. So basically, when I do the class sometimes, people ask, "Wait, you can meditate with the card?" Like, yeah. Like, think about it. If you're going through something, you take out the strength card, meditate with it, and then going out to your mind's eye and envision yourself, taming that beast. And remember, with tarot, if you see something like a female or a person figure and an animal below, it's trying to allude to something, taming your animalistic natures, which is always below. Masons know this too. Why do you think the apron is placed in a certain way? Because it's understanding. We're trying to keep those base animalistic urges down.
Now you get into chakras.
Yeah. That's it.
You're bleeding into chakra discussion here.
Good stuff. Yeah. So, if I may, next question I wanted to ask is, do you think there are specific tarot cards or archetypes that resonate deeply with Masonic teachings? Could you give us some examples?
Well, I did give one already,
Perfect.
Which is the Works card, the
Thank
three of discs. That card.
Yeah.
Because what this card means. Now, discs or pentacles are representative of the element of earth.
Yep. Okay.
Masons, earth, materiality. Okay. This card refers to physical effort and mental effort as well.
Okay.
But primarily, you got to do the work.
Yeah.
Okay. So when this card now a tarot card is like a musical note.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean much alone. So when you get it has its own whole concatenation of images.
Okay.
Just like a note has a sound.
But it's just one note.
But it's just one note. Okay. So I'm very wary when people start building, I just pulled a card. It's a good thing to do.
Yeah. Okay.
Give you some meditation.
Yeah.
It may have a particular meaning at a time.
Okay.
But when you start to actually read, you need to see how the patterns emerge. It's just like a note. Oh, that's a cool note, or that's even a cool chord.
Yeah.
What is the song?
Yeah.
What is the harmony? That's where the spreads, the more elaborate spreads, become important.
Okay.
That's how you really tell the messages. When I read people, I don't really pull a card for someone unless they're versed. If they're already tarot versed, then I'll pull a card because it'll have particular meaning to them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and us both, we can sort of mean on the card.
Yeah.
But if I read from the minimum read I do is 3 cards.
Yeah.
Minimum.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
More likely I'm doing,
You do a lot more, right?
Yeah, I can do operations.
Okay.
But so that's one card. The physical work that has to be done.
Okay.
Because what are Masons really about?
Yeah.
Building. And so you have to do the work. And again, in a sense, from an image point of view, the Crowley-Harris card is you need to know a little bit more about what's behind it. But this one, the weight tells you right up front.
Yeah.
They're all planning, they're all building, they're all working on something.
Yeah, his is very,
and he's wearing an apron and he's at work.
Explicit. It's out there. That's why.
And there are some Masonic symbols in there.
Yeah.
In that card as well.
Yeah. I think there's a lot. I think they're all over. And one of my favorite cards that has some, that only Masons would know is the Star. Yes, and that's one of my favorite cards.
This is Crowley's version of the Star card. And this is one of the cards that Brother Maldonado referred to as having been switched in place by Aleister Crowley. Crowley, all three of these men made tremendous contributions. Papist, Waite, and Crowley. And what Papist did was posited for the first real time in a public book. His book was fairly popular when he printed it, unlike Eliphas Levy's book, which was much more esoteric. So when Papist comes along, he's in Paris, so he's able to get it published and it gets some sales. So people start to learn about this stuff. So he's the one who takes Eliphas's idea that the tarot is probably based on the Kabbalah and the Tree of Life. And that is, you can see in the older card, the star, the blazing star, is quite clear. In Crowley's version, the star is conflated because the universe has been realized to be so much huger. 40 years later. So everything is abstract. What was clear and present is now, we don't really know so much. It's much more mysterious in a way.
And it's interesting because the Hebrew letter that he used for that star,
Zadi.
But he actually didn't use Zadi. He switched it up.
It's not the star.
Yeah, so I think he has, what is that one? Is that, let me see, it's upside down. Yeah, that's Tau. So that's like, represents like the cross. It's the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. But with the star and the Rider-Waite Smith deck didn't have Hebrew letters on it, but the Boda deck actually does. So when it comes to esoteric and Kabbalistic paths, they have Zadi connect to a star, which means fish hook. And there's some reasons why, because they say this card connects to maybe meditation. So when you're meditating, you're like fishing. You're fishing for some intuition or something.
Okay.
I think anyone could say that as well with this. But it's interesting how he still has Aquarius connected to it. I noticed.
Well, yes, and what Crowley did, Papist theorized. Pretty accurately that the tarot was based upon the Kabbalah, particularly the Tree of Knowledge, Tree of Life, rather. The Tree of Life. Whereas Crowley, who was a mathematical genius, proved it mathematically. But yes, that is the schematic of the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. You'll know 10 sephirs or circles connected together with 22 paths of the Sephiroth. The 22 paths of the Sephiroth correspond directly to the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet and the 22 cards of the major arcana of the tarot. Whereas the 10 circles correspond directly to the pip cards, the minor arc characters, 1 ace through 10.
Nice.
And the way the energy develops is an enormous study. But you should know that connection. Yes, and how from there your entire meditational and exploration can really begin if you study that and the tarot.
And it's evident too, because this, I think the 10 of pentacles or 10 of coins, or what other you could use for it? 10 of what?
Well, you would use all 4 of the 10s would be placed on the 4 Sephiroth, the 10th Sephiroth.
Yeah, so I think the actual 10 of Pentacles card, if you look at it on the Rider-Waite deck, I think it's on that deck too.
Well, he does it on all 4 of them.
He does this.
Yeah, he does the Tree of Life.
So I like that because it's like, oh, okay.
So it's direct.
Yes.
It's not, but it's only if you know it. If you don't know it, it's right in front of you, and you can't see it because you don't know the Tree of Knowledge.
He did it on here too. Waite did it too as well, but you have to kind of point it out.
My 10s are all at the bottom of the deck. That's why it's taking so long to find the 10s.
Yeah, that's all right.
Here, this is the 10 of Pentacles.
Yeah, see, he did it.
Pull up the image again.
See how that matches up?
exactly the same positioning. And you'll see the 10, they all have different names. The
Yeah.
Sephiroth, Kafel, Chokmah, Bina, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So that's the 10, and he does it with the other 3 suits too.
Yeah.
Now, you've probably gone over this, but
That's okay.
your viewers should know that the tarot is basically divided into 2 types of cards. Yeah, there you go.
And this is a Rider-Waite deck too. He has it there as well. Same exact pattern.
Same pattern of the tree of life.
Yeah.
And the tarot is generally divided into 2 parts, the major arcana and the minor arcana.
Yeah.
And there are 22 major arcana cards and 56 minor arcana cards.
Yeah, right.
Now in these are interesting because these are also 10s. Now if you look at the cups, can you hold that up, Johnny?
Yes, sir.
10 of cups.
Yep.
If you get it close enough, you can see that sure the cups are in the same position as the tree of life.
Ah, wow. I never noticed that. Look at that.
Look at that. And the 10 of swords, the hilts of the swords are also in the same position.
Ah.
But you count the hilts as the Sephiroth. Same exact position.
Wow.
Just like with, that's the 8. That's the 10.
I think one of the cups has it too as well, right? Yeah.
Oh,
So.
right one? Yes, my eyes are going. And that's the 10.
Just 10 of wands?
Yeah.
Okay, wow.
So,
It's interesting too. He has a lot of, some colors kind of look similar.
well, the color schemes certainly in this one are particularly,
Yeah.
deliberate. Color means a lot in all of these studies. And then, of course, the minor arcana are divided into 4 suits.
Yep.
And contrary to popular belief, the 4 suits of the minor arcana, although they directly correspond to a regular deck of cards,
Yeah.
they preceded the regular deck. The regular deck is based on them, not the other way around.
Yeah. When you say regular deck, you mean playing cards?
Yeah, playing cards.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
56, right?
right.
Yeah, or 52.
52.
52.
Well, because the tarot has the pages or the princesses.
Yeah.
They have an extra court card.
It's funny. I learned recently, and I did it. One of the brothers was here a couple times ago on the show we recorded here. There's a reading you could do. I don't know if you ever tried this one before. I learned it from the Tarot Association. It's a court card reading. You pull all 16 court cards out, and there's questions that align with each card, each suit, right? Or what they represent as far as if it's a wand, if it's a king, or if it's a queen, right? If it's a knight, and if it's upright or if it's reverse, it tailors the actual question you could ask with the card, and then you pull the second card to get really the answer, and then you could do this as many times as you want with the cards and just 16 of them to really pinpoint
Who is it?
a more direct way because. I don't know about you, but tarot.
I've never used that read, by the way. That's
Yeah.
very interesting. It's the
Yeah,
first I've heard
it's the first
that,
one
of someone actually doing that.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's because tarot's really interpretation. So yes, these cards mean something, but sometimes if I want to get a yes or no answer, I personally really wouldn't use tarot as much for a definite yes or no answer. I've used in the past geomancy, right? Even though I know this is not a geomancy podcast, but I've used geomancy or a pendulum, because a pendulum you could get a yes or no answer, and with geomancy, even though I don't know if you ever heard of geomancy,
Sure.
it's very intricate, and it's a whole thing to figure it out. But you get a good judge or a bad judge, and that determines good judge means yes, bad judge means no. So it's more of and I've used it before for figuring out employment, figuring out different relationships, and it's been spot on. Whereas with the tarot is more open to interpretation, well, this could mean it's a good, you got to really dive deeper. I think when it comes to yes, I try and find a yes or no.
Crowley famously wrote that divination is the most perilous form of magic. Now that's an interesting thing for him to say,
Okay.
who would call up spirits and demons,
Oh, yeah,
okay? But you think, gee, a demon can be really dangerous.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, we don't really want them roaming around or, you know, getting into the ether in our homes.
Yeah, yeah.
So we cast sacred circles and
Yep.
do all the protective work, right? But what did he mean by that? And I've thought about that a long time. And the reason is, when you divine something, you're trying to get knowledge that human beings are normally not allowed to have, right?
Oh, okay.
Okay? And you're going to try to pull out the past, present, or future
Mm-hmm.
someone.
Yeah.
And when you divine something, whether you use a dowsing or
Yeah,
whichever
yeah.
you use, a pendulum,
Okay.
or a tarot, or
Yeah.
scrying, and a
Yeah,
crystal
yeah.
ball,
Yep.
or a mirror, flame, whatever you use, you are hunching that your instinct is going to be accurate.
Okay.
And you're going to make the right choice for yourself based upon that divination.
Yeah, wow.
Or if you're reading someone else, that they are going to make the right choice.
Yeah.
So divination has to be very carefully made, because a wrong interpretation,
Yeah, right.
a wrong approach could create disaster in people's lives,
Wow.
as well as reflect on the reader, the diviner, in a rebound negative karmic way.
Wow.
So you do have to be careful. Now, I do not consider myself naturally psychic. Over years of studying with
Yeah.
the cards, I have developed some psychic ability
Okay.
at times. So what I've learned, and I'm always still trying to learn,
Okay.
is when I'm reading someone, if I get things like, yeah, you work in a bank, or
Yeah.
whatever it may
Yeah.
be that is
Yeah.
channeled, that is not interpretive, am I sure that that is a channeling and not something I'm putting on the read, that I'm guiding the read? Keeping that objectivity
Okay.
is very important. It's a very hard skill to learn if you're not a natural psychic.
Yeah.
But it is true, and it can be done.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah. Sometimes it's something to think about. Sorry. Getting his text. Because sometimes, again, we don't think that. We think, oh, just do a reading for someone. But you have to really, I guess, kind of have your intuition trained in a sense, right? In a way, you have to kind of, because you could affect your life and them too as well, based on what you're telling them.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's what Crowley was talking about, because if you can anger the forces, first of all, against you.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
can misdirect energy by divining. And look, my personal approach in all these years of tarot is that I do not charge for my readings. I am not a professional card reader. I make my living in a completely material way, okay? In a different way. And my personal belief is that if you charge for readings, you're taking money for it, you are essentially, to use what might be an offensive word to some, prostituting the power, the gift that is being given to you to see things you're not naturally entitled to see. It doesn't mean you may not be giving good readings.
I see. Yeah.
You see some very psychic and excellent people who are professionals and give good readings, but their own energy may be at risk if they are not pure.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
If they're not pure in what they do.
Yep.
And very often tarot cards, when you go to a first tarot reading, and I've done this a couple of times, it's almost like they have a playbook, some of them.
Oh, yeah, right?
Right?
Yeah.
There's something in you that needs to be flushed out. We need to get another reading. You need to come back and do a more thing reading.
Yeah.
So what they will do is they will read you ways to make you keep coming back for more readings.
Yeah.
That's immediately corrupting
Yeah.
the purity of the message that you really need to know.
It's almost like if they're creating karmic ties, maybe, in a way, or karma in general, because they're kind of. I think it's all about intention. Sometimes they might have the wrong intention.
It's intention about money.
If the intention is the money,
They
then
want the money.
that's not good.
And not to put anybody down, but this is my own personal belief.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of the questions, it's interesting that I had planned to ask you. Answer most of them. Very, very good.
Okay.
So I'm gonna pull a little go further along here. So, how do you personally use tarot in your own Masonic journey? Is it more about self-reflection, or do you find practical guidance within the cards?
It's a little bit. It's like a two-sided question.
Okay.
As far as my Masonic journey, it is very rare that I will use cards in my Masonic journey.
Okay.
I have done readings. Sometimes you have fundraising events,
Yeah, okay.
and I don't charge.
Yeah, yeah.
I give free readings at
Yeah,
those
yeah.
events to people who have paid the admission and trying to raise money.
Okay.
So I don't charge myself. I don't
Okay.
take any profit. I just read as part of the entertainment.
Okay.
So I've done that kind of thing.
Okay.
And once in a while, if I will have an issue with personalities or the politics of it sometimes,
Oh, I see.
I
Yeah,
will
yeah,
say,
yeah.
all right, let me take a look at that situation, and I'll throw a spread for myself.
Okay.
To say, all right, who are the players
Oh, I see.
really, and what are they really up to?
Okay.
And try to trigger the meditational idea, of course I
Okay.
will,
Yeah.
do that, to try and figure out what is the situation, because I'm not understanding what they're doing.
Okay.
Or how do I make the best choices here? And because one of the things tarot is very good at doing as you get better at it, is you can figure out who the people are who may be around you,
Okay.
for better and worse.
Oh, okay.
Because there's 16 court cards.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And every one of them represents a person,
Yeah.
an actual person.
Wow.
In your life, or,
Okay.
or somehow, for good, better, and different. So if you get to know the people and those cards, you can now identify who it is and what they're really doing.
Wow.
Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's not so good.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes knowledge is it's good, but it can be bad because sometimes, like it's like psychology, sometimes going through it, learning it now you're looking at stuff psychologically, and then sometimes it's like, let me turn that lens off, right?
Right, you put that lens onto
Yeah,
everything,
yeah.
and maybe that's got its own pitfalls.
So, what advice would you give a fellow Mason interested in exploring tarot? Are there specific resources or approaches you'd recommend? Or it could be to the general public too as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would tell a Mason the same thing. I might point out a few of the esoteric symbolic connections,
Yeah,
because
okay.
I know that Mason knows those symbols already,
Yeah, yeah.
and maybe that would help him have a quicker entree.
Okay.
And say, oh yeah, that, I
Yeah.
see it. But I would tell anybody the same thing. There's certain, as I told you my story, which is
Yeah.
actually good that you started with that,
Yeah, right.
because so you kind of the viewer knows my background.
Correct.
I am very careful about certain things.
Yeah.
And I'm not generally a superstitious man. But with tarot, I am careful. So, yes, I wrap my cards in silk when
Okay.
I'm done.
Right.
Yes. And then I put that silk wrap card, here's my silk, okay. I wrap the cards in silk, and I put them in a bag,
Yeah.
okay, a protected bag.
Okay.
I keep them, when I first buy a deck, and I leave them sit at my home for like a year or more.
Wow.
Until somewhere out of the blue, the moment comes, like, okay, now's the moment. And then I'll look at that deck.
That's incredible. Yeah.
I have slept with decks under my pillow for months and months and months.
Oh my goodness.
To bring the energy
Yeah,
into
yeah, yeah.
me and to act. Should never read anybody who is drunk or under the influence of alcohol.
Okay.
A single glass of wine or two
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
is okay, a beer. But nobody who has started to lose their perception. Same with you. You should never be under the influence of a drug or alcohol when you read. It will
Yeah.
definitely interfere. I charge my decks. I realign them
Okay.
every time I read. Not for every reading,
Yeah.
but every night. So if I come out and I go to a place, I'm going to do like 20 readings.
Yeah.
Before I start the night, I will charge the decks.
Okay. Okay.
I will say an invocation before every read.
Wow.
Invoke the higher spirits. There's a million of them you can use.
Of course.
You can make them up,
Yeah, yeah.
yourself, so long as they're purely made.
Yes.
And those are certain things I always do, and I always recommend them because I've had the bad experience of ignoring all that
Yeah.
and watching the karma come back at me threefold.
Oh yeah.
Right?
It happens. You're right.
That's the rule of three. The energy you send out will come back to you threefold.
Oh,
So
yeah.
if you send out good energy, it'll come back to you threefold. Bad energy will come back to you threefold.
Yeah. I agree. So, why do you wrap it in? You said silk.
Yes.
So, I mean, just so viewers understand, like, whoa, what is that? It's a protect? Are you trying to shield energy from?
I'm going to ask you a question, John. What is silk? Where does it come from?
The east, maybe.
Well, it comes from the east.
Okay,
Very
all
good.
right.
Yes. Silkworms.
Silkworms.
Okay. Silk is the only fabric. Okay.
Okay.
That is created by an animal,
Ah,
an organic animal. All the
okay.
other fabrics, except for the plastics,
Yeah.
which are out completely, are all created from trees, cotton.
Yeah, cotton, okay.
And other textiles, but silk is built.
Oh.
Okay, it's made.
Okay.
It's kind of like a spider web.
Wow.
And that's one reason it's the most organic of materials, because it's extremely strong, extremely beautiful and soft at the same time.
Yeah.
So that's the traditional usage for wrapping.
Oh,
And
it's
you
silk.
can wrap it in anything else too.
Okay, yeah.
But I mean, that's the traditional. Right?
Okay.
What does it cost? $4 to get a foot by foot piece of silk.
Wow.
It's not much if you go to a fabric store.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't actually wrap my cards in silk, but I've done some ceremonial magic where I had to wrap it in maybe white or something prior to using it, and then set a day aside astrologically to charge it, maybe with certain energies, or consecrate it.
Right.
Well, consecrating, in magic we use fire or incense, and purifying we would use like holy water or something. I probably wouldn't put water on my cards, but within the space of it too as well. But that's if I wanted to kind of purify the deck or consecrate them, or using pentagrams, an evoking pentagram to maybe invoke powerful or pure energetic items when charging them. Yeah.
He just made the sign of the invoking pentagram.
Yeah.
And before I read, one of the rituals I've developed, because over all these years I've developed my own spreads too, and for different purposes, different locations, different reasons. I have 7 or 8, 10 different spreads that I've developed myself.
Wow. Okay.
But before every read, when I do the invocation, when I'm done, I do that.
Oh, you do?
Every time.
Wow.
Yeah. And so if I have my wand with me, I'll use my wand.
That's
usually I use my
incredible.
fingers. I usually don't have my wand with me. Although, the owner of Buddha Belly Records, my dear brother, gave me a new amethyst today.
Look at that.
Which I'm going to be putting in my wand because my old one fell out and broke.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a little, I guess, traditionalist. I use a wooden wand. I have it's called in the Golden Dome we use it's called the double wand of power. It's black to banish one end, and the one end's white to invoke.
Okay.
But I also have a ritual dagger that I use when I'm banishing. So within magic, if you're banishing, the dagger is only used for banishing. You would never use the dagger to invoke.
To invoke.
Yeah. So because what does a sword do? Like a justice card, right? It's used to administer justice, right? It could be used to protect something, but swords or scissors or something are known to cut stuff off.
Right.
So that's why they use it to banish and stuff.
Sure.
Yeah. So we're getting pretty much close to the end here. We can just kind of wrap it up with some final remarks for them, and then I'd definitely love to have you on here again for another show, because I think we really just touched the surface with some items, and I think we're definitely going to have some good future conversation on some deeper aspects of the tarot and how we both use it. So yeah, the floor is yours.
Well, I mean, I want to thank John Maldonado for bringing me on to the show. I agree that, I've been doing this for 30 years, and I consider myself an intermediate, at tarot.
Okay.
And I've given thousands of readings, over time. And it is a tremendously rewarding study. One of the things you have to do if you start, don't be afraid to read people, even though I've given you some admonishments about what I don't like to see and do myself.
Yeah.
Don't let that stop you from reading people, because you will only get better if you actually read people.
Yes.
And you have to dare to be wrong.
Yeah.
Because the cards, what I have learned, the cards are never wrong. The interpretation may be wrong.
Yes.
You may read them wrong.
Correct.
But if you have invoked and you have approached it with purity,
Yeah.
and the person opposite has too, you have to watch them.
Yeah.
Because if they're a skeptical, snide person, you're not going to get a clear reading.
Correct.
All right? But the cards will be right, even if you don't get them right. But as you get better, you will. And over time, revelations will start to occur.
Nice.
And you'll develop your skills.
Excellent. Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Once
You're
again,
welcome.
Thank you for coming on the show.
You're welcome.
All right.
My
This
pleasure.
is Maldo's Magic.
Blessed be. And happy Halloween. Happy Sabbath.
That's right.
Good night.
Good night.